Welcome to the latest episode of Five on the Floor on the Five Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app, Apple Podcasts, Android, Spotify, or the Five Reasons YouTube channel. Also, check out Off the Floor. Link is right here in the description. $2.99 per month. It's the place to vent with us and with other Heat fans all day long. This episode is specially sponsored by our friends over at Underdog. If you're a football fan, you think Tua Tagovailoa is going to throw for over 237.5 passing yards in Buffalo. Maybe Tyreek actually goes over 59.5. You can play it on Underdog. Join over 5 million fans that are already playing on Underdog with their pick'em game. You can win money by making picks on your favorite players. You can win up to 1,000 times your money just by choosing higher or lower on players' stats, even in basketball, like points, blocks, steals, and much more. Also, it's currently Boostober on Underdog. There's a promo to play nearly every day, and they're giving you almost unlimited profit boosts to make basketball picks. I've used Underdog myself. Played Bam lately. Probably not the best idea. We're going to get into that today. But you can download the app and use the code 5 to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. So check it out. Here's the key. You must be 18 or over and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. It's void in Colorado. If you're concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER. That's 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. Call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY if you're in New York. Again, use the code 5, get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. And now, today's episode.
Down the Biscayne. Yikes. 5 on the floor, ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing, you can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars, wearing rubber frogs. Just like Bucker said, you in trouble, y'all. Kept the flow playing, got it all banned. Y'all seen the block, stop with one hand. And Pat, we trust.
You sound scared.
It's about have the guts, we here to bring the heat. Y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to Five on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, Alex Toledo, Brady Hawk, and others from the Five Reasons Sports Network. Also, make sure to subscribe to Off the Floor for the most heat anywhere.
All right, welcome back to Five on the Floor. Here's today's floor plan. I'm Ethan Skolnick, and follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick at Five Reasons Sports. We got Greg Sylvander. You can follow him at Greg Sylvander, the Miami Heat, coming off a loss against the New York Knicks. Greg, Naveen, and Major. We got to get Major off the post game. I'm sorry, we love you, Major, but they always lose, right?
He's currently not scheduled for another one. We're going to be careful about where we put him. Hopefully, it'll be a Detroit or a Washington, one of those games.
Well, if it is, and then they lose one of those games, they can't lose
Then
this
we'll
one
know
coming
for
up in
sure.
Mexico City. Yeah, no, we do love Major. He covers the Skyforce for us, along with Matt Hannafin, and he was on there last night. We had Naveen all the way from Philippines watching that trash in the third quarter, so we appreciate him joining us as well. So I know you guys covered some of this last night, but we're going to focus very specifically on Bam here, and I'm just going to start here. I mean, you and I can't get around this, okay? We can't hope traffic this stuff with him every single season and talk about the breakout and all the good things that he's doing, which was true in the preseason, and then look past the fact that he has been a very average basketball player over the first 4 games of the season. And I know some of the defensive metrics are good, actually. I saw some of those posted today, and he's still in the 95th percentile, and so I do think we need to give him some credit for that. But this is not the Bam we were promised, right? This is not the Bam we were promised. This is not the Bam we saw. There's no excuse now about it being late in the season and he's had to carry them forever, and we tend to see his numbers tail off. I understand he played in the Olympics, so there could be a little bit of wear from that, but I mean, he looked great in camp. So I don't really understand what's going on right now. I don't know if it's scheme and they're just not getting the ball. I know Jimmy was asked about that last night. Terry was asked about that. Spo volunteered it last night without being asked about him specifically. But I'm sorry, if he's going to be a 10 to 12 point a game player, and Jimmy's a whole nother story, right? Because Jimmy, we saw the same thing last night we've seen against good teams. It's just that he doesn't get the usage. He doesn't get the volume. He doesn't seem engaged enough. And I know people are going to say, well, because they're focusing more on the guards. I have a hard time blaming Tyler when he plays a game at that level. The 2 stars against the good teams have not been good enough, but just not even close. And just to focus on Bam. Like, what's going on here? I don't understand.
So there's a couple things. One, I think that it is completely valid to kind of unpack the fact that Bam is struggling offensively. He's not hitting shots, so the efficiency isn't there. And it's one of the rare moments, and we mentioned this on the post game show, but it was just we said it in passing, but I think it's worth reemphasizing. He's letting the offensive woes mess with the defense. I mean, some of the metrics may still look okay, but the eye test is a whole different story. And so I think that that's interesting. He's clearly frustrated and trying to just get through these stretches. We've seen him get over the hump and get through bad shooting stretches before. The team's doing him no favors, and I'll probably be called a little bit of a Bam apologist for this, but with the way that they've adjusted the offense, and we're going to keep talking about over and over again the 5-out stuff, but there's other subtle things that they're doing where the ball is sticking in the guard's hands. There's a lot of two-man game happening between the backcourt, which I didn't expect to see. Terry and Tyler are complementing one another, but it's coming with a lot of touches for those guys. Bam doesn't have nearly enough touches, nearly enough overall field goal attempts for the amount of minutes that he's playing. So they're going to have to sort that out. And Spoelstra took responsibility for it. So I think it's important to acknowledge that they see that, but he's got to hit the shots too. And so that's where him just starting out in a slump, I think we can't overreact to that. But the fact that it's messing with the defense, and then the overall theme of just, if this is the Terry and Tyler show, there is clearly a ceiling on what we're working with here. Jimmy and Bam have to be a bigger part of that for this to not be a playing group. So you got to have those guys step up. And we expected Bam to come back from the Olympics, maybe a different version of himself, a more evolved version. And we just haven't got to it yet. It's only 4 games in, but it's clearly, when it's compounded with Jimmy looking kind of, astray at times, at least against New York last night, it's made for a weird start to the season where the backcourt, which we had the most questions about, is kind of playing the best. Even though Terry had a bad shooting night, he came through in the fourth quarter. Tyler was really good. So it's a weird start to the season for the Heat's best players.
Tyler's been their best player, and that's problematic. It just is and that's no slight to Tyler, but you're right. There's a ceiling to that. Like, unless he's going to become, an efficient 27 point a game scorer, where he can be leaned on every night to do that. His reads have been spectacular. It's not just the shooting. He's just looked totally comfortable and at peace. And I saw someone tweet this, and they're right. He's the only one who looks like he's carrying over what happened in the preseason. Yeah. Like, he looks like he got it. Like, and it's funny because he was the one we were most worried about.
Terry's had his moments too, although he didn't shoot well last night.
He has, but the metrics with him are awful. On the
defensive end, it's been tough.
He's in the 1 percentile of pick and roll ball handling in the league, and it's not the good 1%. Okay. And I'm a guy who likes Terry Rozier, but Tyler has been their best player. And again, that is problematic because teams are going to start to scheme that away. And I don't know if he physically is going to be able to. He's doing it with counters, with reads, with savvy, and all of that is great. And he deserves tremendous credit for it. Like, was he in the right headspace? Yes, he was. Okay. Like,
shooting 48%, 43% from 3, 22, 5, and 5 is what he's giving the team right now. So he's kind of on the Devin Booker track, not to interrupt, but I think
don't do that, because then you're going to start all that stuff again. But I'm just saying he's been great for what they've wanted him to do. He's averaging over 9 3-point attempts per game. We've said he had to hike those numbers. That's all good. And everybody's like, okay, but that's coming at the expense of other stuff. And it does feel to me, and I'm not a psychologist, okay, but Bam didn't speak to the media after the game last night. Now, we get on Jimmy when he doesn't do it, and we sort of give Bam a pass because he does everything media-wise, community-wise, etc. He's always the one that they count on. Much credit to him for that. He is the successor to UD and Dwayne in that way. But Jimmy spoke last night, and Bam left. And I don't think when Jimmy just does what Jimmy wants to do. Jimmy just doesn't feel like. I heard him having a conversation. I'm not getting into it, but yeah, I heard him having a conversation in the locker room yesterday about something else. Like there's certain things he just doesn't want to do. He doesn't do it. I feel like when Bam doesn't do it, it's because something's bothering him. He doesn't want to say the wrong thing.
Yeah,
Jimmy doesn't care what he says. But I do think Bam wants to represent the organization in a certain way, and it means a lot to him to be the torchbearer. And I remember the only times he's clearly frustrated. That's the way I view it, because Dwayne the only times Dwayne would bolt on the media was when he just did not want to say. He knew what he was going to say and he didn't want to say it, and he didn't know exactly how he was going to put it. And it was very few times in the 16 years or whatever that I covered him down here. Very few times that Dwayne would like shirk that responsibility, but there was usually a reason. I remember, during the Indiana series in 2012, I remember him checking out of a media session, and we know why. I mean, his knee was bothering him. He had to go see Crean and all that kind of stuff. We saw the way he responded, which is he and LeBron had arguably the best 2.5 games for a duo that anybody's ever had to win that series with Bosch out. But I don't know. It when he skips, and like we went locker room, he was in there for a second, because the way they do it now is they bring 2 out, right? Much different than the way they used to do it. I don't like it. I'll just be honest, but it's post-COVID and it's the adjustment that they made. But they basically bring 2 out to the media room. We always have 3 people there, but we're the only ones that do. The other outlets send 1. So we typically, Alex goes to the visiting locker room a lot of times. Brady goes to the visiting interview room. Brady goes to the home interview room, and I kind of float and I'll go to the locker room. But they won't have anybody talk in the locker room until the beat guys get back from Spolstra.
interview room.
And right. So it's like you're just sitting there in the locker room waiting. You know what I'm saying? So it's one of those things, like us having more resources doesn't really help in that regard, because we're waiting anyway. So we're waiting yesterday. We're in the locker room, and Bam, he was in and out. And I was like, and I assumed, okay, I knew he wasn't going to talk at the podium because they said Tyler and Terry were going to talk. Okay. That's fine. They're the 2 guys they chose. But I was like, okay, well, I figured Bam would do it at his locker. He didn't. To me, again, that speaks to frustration. I don't think he wants to say the wrong thing here. And the fact that all these players spoke for him and then Spolstra volunteered it, and I get it, but like, we're in game 4. I mean, Greg, I wasn't expecting this in game 4. Like, I mean, I'll be honest. Everybody's been playing his PRA over, because we're like, okay, the number keeps getting lower. It was 30, it was 28, it's 26. He's gone under it every game. His numbers now, 31.5 minutes. He's averaging 9.5 shot attempts. Okay, the goal has always been 15. So the last 2 years, he was 14.9, 14.3. Right, he's shooting 39.5% from the floor. His effective field goal percentage is that exact same. You know why it's that exact same? He's 0 of 8 on threes. We made such a big deal about the threes. He hasn't
2
made one. I said
you're right so far, going under on the what we said.
I said 2.5. I said 2.5. I said he'll go under, and I don't think it's going to increase now if he's losing confidence in it. And the free throw percentage, it feels like that's kind of where this started. He got to the line in the opening game against Orlando, but he wasn't making the free throws, and he's at 66.7%. He goes through these funks and sort of ends up around 75% every year anyway, which is his career average. But he's below that right now. The rebounds are down 10.4 last year to 7.3, mostly because the defensive rebounding. The offensive rebound is the same. He's gone from 8.1 to 5.0. They're the worst defensive rebounding team in the league by percentage right now. His assists are down from 3.9 to 3. Steals and blocks are virtually the same. Playing 3 less minutes, and his turnovers are down. He's not even getting the ball in position to turn it over. So again, I didn't expect this, because you said, well, we expected to come out for the summer and the Olympics. Like, yes, I pushed that narrative. Like, he looked great to me. He was their best player in at least 2 of the 3 preseason games.
I thought he was going to lead the team in scoring. Like, when we were doing our predictions, I pivoted from my initial thought, which would be Tyler will do it like always. And I thought it could be Bam. And it's just this adjustment that they made, and it's subtle stuff. Like, I think that it's getting a little overstated on social media and some of the hyper focus groups talking about how much they were really changing in the offense. They're still, like, I think second to last, if not last in pace. So, I mean, it hasn't, not that much has changed, but you wouldn't want to see what you would categorize as basically your franchise cornerstone, because Jimmy's there's stuff up in the air there with the future there. So Bam is that torchbearer, right? So you would think that they would design stuff to maximize him first, but it's been more the guards are taking over, and you don't know if it's because Bam is pulling back and the field goal attempts are down because he's not being as aggressive, or is it scheme? And I think maybe we need a larger sample size, but to see him kind of get this frustrated this quickly tells me that there's probably more to it than just bad shooting.
No, there's a potential. There's solutions to kind of get him going, but all of them take away from something else. That's the problem. And it does feel a little like deck chairs in the Titanic right now. Like, and again, it's 4 games in the season; they're 2-2. So I don't want to go, but I'm talking about as far as where this goes, right? Like, you make a decision. Okay, we're going to lean into this core 4. We're going to try Jovic with it. So leaning into that basically meant we're going to lean into this backcourt. To make the backcourt effective, they have to have the ball in their hands. Because you said it, their connection seems to be pretty damn good. Like, that doesn't, like, Tyler seems to have a much better connection with him, with Terry, than he ever did with Kyle. Okay. So, like, this, I mean, that has been good. But again, it can't come at the expense of their 2 highest paid signature players, like, floating through the game. And I also think there are some other factors. I don't want to make excuses here. I do think some of this gets a little better when Kevin Love gets back, and he's out with personal reasons. But I just think there's a comfort level, particularly in those non-Bam lineups, with Jimmy and Brady, and I have talked about this a lot. The Brady with Jimmy Love connection. I think getting Love on that second unit over TB. Stop with the wear stuff, everybody. He's not going to fix this right now. Okay, they're trying to get him ready with his development. I just, that is not the solution, to play where with Bam or any of that kind of stuff. No, okay, not at this point, not the 4-game point of the season. I know people are going to flame me for that, but it's just where everybody goes. I mean, would they get better minutes out of Ware than Bryant? Sometimes, perhaps, but that's not going to significantly change. I always come back to this.
By Cat last night. Like, let's just be honest about it. He was cooking everyone, and I am the least Karl Anthony Towns fan that you could find.
I know,
and I still got to give him credit. He had a great game.
He had a great game. And look, if Jimmy, who we know his feelings about Cat, and then Bam, who, cares about where he stands in the pecking order. And Cat is one of those guys who, depending on what kind of player you like, is sort of in that top 5 mix with him, or top 5, top 6, whatever, however people look at it. And, so that's a matchup that he would typically take pride in, and Jimmy would take pride in. And you got a game of sort of nothing. I mean, I just, what I'm saying? Like, I don't really understand where it's coming from with Bam, like, other than maybe frustration with role here and direction. But on the other side, we'll get into some possible solutions, because there are other tweaks that maybe Spoelstra could make. But again, I do think this is a little bit, was whack-a-mole a better example here? I just kind of feel like we're,
this is what we were worried about going into the season, and but it's only 4 games in. They've got time to fix it around the break here. We can talk about the ways to do it, but it's all internal stuff.
When are they going to be a good team at home, Greg?
At this moment.
No, I get it, but Greg, Barry's tweet yesterday is damning. Like, when are they going to beat a good team at home? When are they going to be? When's the last? When is that going? I forgot what he had, like 9 straight or 9 of 11 against playoff teams at home. Like, they have to, they're going to go anywhere. They got to, there's more good teams this year. There's not as many great teams, but there's more good teams. There's not as many, there's the 5 dogs in the East. Okay. Like, basically, and maybe a couple in the West. That's it. Like, there are no easy dates anymore, very few. Okay. And then they're heading out on this road trip, after they Washington and Sacramento. Sacramento, like, you're a good team. You beat that team at home. I know the Kings are good. They got talent. They got DeRozan. They got Fox. They got Sabonis. They're good. But if you're a good team at home, it tilts it to you. I don't have confidence about that game. They're going to stop Fox at the point of attack. He's not even playing Hayward.
Sabonis. Like, if Bam is going to be in this weird space, Sabonis will do things similar to what Karl Anthony Towns did, frankly.
I'm with you. All right. We'll get to some possible tweaks here that they can make. But before we do, I want to mention, here's something you should tweak. You got a leak? We need more than a tweak. You got to reach out to our friends over at Water Cleanup of Florida, your one-stop water and mold cleanup shop. Michael Robert, his team based in Boca Raton. They service the entire Tri-County area. I say that all the time, but they go all over the state. Like they help the people of Central Florida, Southwest Florida when there were the issues last year, all that stuff. They're just good people. They won't take a job unless they think that they can do it. That's one of the things I admire about them. More than 100 5-star reviews on Google. So reach out to them. It's WCUFL.com. It's WCUFL.com. Water Cleanup of Florida. If you've got the schmutz,
they got the guts.
All right. The starting lineup. Brady and I got into this before the game, and then I got worse. The starting lineup, which by the way starts the third quarter, so it's not just the start of the game. Starting lineup is the worst lineup in the NBA right now.
That's rough.
By net rating. We can do the small sample size theater and say wait till everybody gets healthy, but they are healthy.
Yeah, they're healthy enough. So, in today's league, if you have, basically just Kevin Love is the only guy that's not in the rotation right now. But we talked about this, and I said this after the Orlando game. If Terry is your primary creator, and right now they're in a situation where he's at 14 field goal attempts, Tyler's at 16 field goal attempts, and Jimmy and Bam are beneath both of those guys. There's real question marks on how good you can be. And so I think when we talk about what can they do differently here, it is maybe get back to some of the dribble handoff stuff that Bam can get comfortable with. I would like to say play Duncan more, but this is all compounded by the fact that Duncan Robinson doesn't look right, and his connective tissue with a lot of lineups that would help feature Bam and maximize Bam. He's not really playing well enough to justify that increase in usage in minutes. So they're in this weird space where it's Bam and Duncan struggling. Those two usually feed off one another. So it's going to be the basically Terry and Tyler's responsibility to find Bam in his spots, because Jimmy's not going to find Bam. That's not the answer. So the guards are going to have to be the ones to do it.
Yeah, no doubt. We talk about the Rozier Bam connection. He can throw him a lob, right? Like he's capable of doing that. We've seen that. I just wonder if Jovic is going to be the guy that's sacrificed here.
Yeah, that's what I predicted.
Because
that it's going to not – everyone's going to point to the backcourt and wanting to split up Terry and Tyler, and I think it'll end up being something like Haywood Highsmith or even Jaime Jaquez is getting an opportunity.
I think it's going to be Haywood. I think it's going to be this weird thing where we go from Haywood doesn't play some nights to Spo just puts him in the starting lineup because he knows he's going to defend. And I'm not saying that Jovic is not trying to defend, but it's hard. You don't have enough plus defenders in the starting lineup. You don't. And the one concern I had coming out of camp was we were all talking about the offense. Everybody's like, well, they're a top 5 defense. I mean, some of that was their summer league guys playing at the end of games. Like I don't know. The defense has worried me this year. And it's funny because even Nate Duncan, we had him on and he was more optimistic about their defense than I was. And I'm like, he's had him like, he thinks they could be a top 8 defense. I'm like, how many plus defenders do they have?
They need Jimmy to be the guy who can take the primary scorer on the other team. That's
they're not going to do it
for this.
Not going to do it consistently
because they didn't replace Caleb. They just didn't. And Highsmith is back. So like you can't think of him as incremental to any of this. He was here last year. So they lost Caleb. They didn't necessarily replace him with a player that you can just point at and say, go put him on your best scorer and at least you can get through stretches. So that has to now be Jimmy. And that's not the Jimmy that I see yet.
No, Jimmy will do things defensively. We saw it, I guess, was the third game of the year, right? The home game against Detroit, where he'll get in the passing lanes and create havoc and create the 5 steals and the deflections and all that. And that's great. That's great. But asking him to lock someone down at this stage of his career is just not the role that we've seen him play consistently. And also they do need him to engage more offensively. So the steals and deflections get him going offensively. They get him easy ones. Sometimes then he'll run ahead after the steal. If you pass it to someone else, he gets something on the break, something in early transition. Like that's all good. But asking him to be the lockdown guy, they have one guy. It's Haywood. I mean, Bam, yes, is brilliant everywhere. But I'm saying, and I know this is turning away from a Bam episode now, but it's this may become an issue going forward with Bam too, because they don't have enough really good individual defenders. Like people are complaining about Drew's minutes last night, and I'm like, I thought Drew played well. Like this is, to me, Right? Like Drew came in and he was creating havoc defensively. He guards his guy. He can't shoot, but like everything else, like he does. He rebounds. Like he's around the ball. He doesn't try to do too much most of the time offensively. Everybody's got to get off of Drew Smith. Like Spo needs to figure out like who his ninth is going to be consistently, and I don't know if he's waiting for Josh to show him more, and maybe that's why he's kind of rifling through guys right now. Show more in practice and that he's fully healthy because Josh told me the other night he was ready to go and then he was on the injured list again. So it seems to be now it's the heel, like one setback after another. But I mean, I was fine with Drew playing, but Haywood has to play regularly. I'm with Brady on this. Like I thought he turned around the Detroit game with his activity, his ability to kind of frustrate Cade Cunningham for a couple of minutes after Cade was running amok. The problem is they don't have a guy other than Bam who's going to do that to a guy like Towns. They don't have the kind of size. So then if you put Haywood in the starting lineup over Jovic, you've just gotten smaller again. And if you put Hawkins in, you got a fifth guy who kind of needs the ball. Because
You're right.
Because Jaime is willing to do the off the ball stuff, but he's best with the ball in his hands still. Even as good a cutter he is, you don't want him standing in the corner.
And
I think this is heading
clearly
towards
defined as 6-man. You're right about that. It would be Highsmith, but then you run into being short on the bench with other defenders. And if Bam gets in foul trouble, like to guard a big man, like we just talked about Karl Anthony Towns, who's really, that was a perimeter oriented attack from him last night. But there's other guys that it's I guess where fans get frustrated is that it feels like they're a big short, but Khalil Ware's not getting an opportunity. Thomas Bryant's playing those minutes instead. Thomas Bryant's hitting threes and Bam is not even getting, viable attempts up. It's just a weird mix up in the front court. And so when we kind of cycle this all back to what can Bam do differently, I think from his perspective, he has to start hitting shots, and that has to start at the free throw line. And that is a mental thing. That's all that is.
Yeah, and so there are little tweaks they can make. Putting Haywood next to him instead of Jovic. Now we've gotten again. Then we get away from the idea of Jovic being the perfect four next to Bam. At least for the time being.
It's no fault of his. That's what sucks.
No, it's not. It's not. But I do think he's the guy's because they're determined to make the hero or zero thing work, and it's harder to not be determined when Duncan hasn't looked great.
Exactly.
So you don't have that. So then I mean, there's even consideration. Is it time to get Burks more of Duncan's minutes just to have, some more production from that position? Duncan looks fine physically to me. It feels to me like he's just missing shots, but he also doesn't have the flair that he had early last season. So maybe he'll work his way into that. I just think, again, I thought this team could be a high 40s win team. I think if things break right, it's still possible. But what I'm starting to see more and more is, not that I didn't see it, but I was hoping it wouldn't emerge as much as it has, it is a little bit of a game of whack-a-mole. I think there's a zero-sum game to a lot of this. Like Spo moves this piece, but it's going to take away from that piece. It's going to take away from that piece. They're kind of forcing this core together, and I don't know. It doesn't. It looks to me like the two most important players are being, are either frustrated or whatever, something else along these lines. Okay, just not as engaged. Maybe hesitant maybe that's the nicest way I can put it for either of them, that it's not kind of, conscious, but it's just sort of what they're doing. But we're getting into these games where they both have single-digit shot attempts, like halfway through the fourth quarter, and they're not going to win consistently like that. And the one thing I'm not going to do here, when there's one guy who's playing at a very high level offensively, I'm not going to do the thing I did a couple of years ago, which is, well, when Tyler scores, they lose. I mean, the numbers tend to trend that way, but it's not. What do we say? Correlation is not causation. I think in this, they would have lost by 40 last night if not for him.
No, they need Tyler to be productive. I think what this boils down to is the Heat made their move, and it was Terry Rozier. And I think a lot of people thought, okay, this is going to change the role going forward for Tyler, or maybe Tyler is going to be gone, because Terry and Tyler never really felt like a great match in the backcourt for a number of reasons. They're playing well enough together to get by, but we'll just cycle back to the fact that if they're leading the team here, they can maybe eat innings throughout a regular season, and that's how you get Jimmy to the finish line. But there is no way that you are going to be in the upper echelon of the Eastern Conference if Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo are not leading this team as the linchpins on defense and, frankly, on offense as well. They don't have to necessarily lead in field goal attempts. The efficiency has to be there. Some of the stuff that we see where you're just converting easy looks, these are the things that they got to get back to and just look fully engaged. That has been a problem with both guys for different reasons, but they can't last with this being the Rozier hero show. I mean, that's kind of like a better version of what they've got going on in a place like Charlotte where Terry Rozier came from.
We'll see what happens. I just keep coming back to this. This is not the Bam we were promised, and they need to figure that out. They can't let this slip too deep into the season, not into the road trip. They need to get him a game, get him some confidence. I hate that we're still here, but we're still here. I mean, that's the thing. So that's what has to happen here. All right, Greg, thank you. We appreciate it. Check out our friends over at Underdog. Use that code 5, FIVE. Also, check out Water Cleanup, WCUFL.com.
Thank you for listening to the 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. After all, someone needs to listen to my dad.